Picture this. You get home, you pull into your own driveway, park your car, and you go inside. But then, a few days later, you get a notice in the mail. It's a parking ticket. A really expensive one. And you've been ticketed for parking on your own property. It sounds completely ridiculous, right? Well, for some folks in San Francisco, this isn't just some crazy hypothetical. It is a very real and very frustrating situation. So let's get into what is actually going on here.
$108. That is a direct quote from a resident who was just completely fed up. He and his neighbors were suddenly getting hit with a ton of these citations, all for supposedly doing the same thing, blocking the sidewalk while parked in their own driveways.
And yeah, we are not talking about a slap on the wrist here. A single ticket costs $108. If you get a couple of these, you're suddenly out hundreds of dollars. But the residents are all saying the same thing. We're parking legally. We're on our own property. There's plenty of room for people to walk by. So what gives? Pretty soon, it started to feel like this weird neighborhood mystery. You have people who have been parking in the exact same spot, the same way for years, and never had a problem. And now, all of a sudden, they're being targeted. It really felt like they were being trolled, but they had no idea who was doing it or even why. So let's just break this down. We're in San Francisco. People are getting tickets for supposedly blocking sidewalks. But the real catch is they're parked in their own private driveways. The residents swear they aren't blocking anything. One guy even measured it and said there was 10 feet of open space. So you can imagine they're left feeling totally confused and just unfairly targeted. And that brings us to the most important question in all of this. If it's not a parking officer walking down the street and seeing a violation with their own eyes, then who is it? Who's making the complaint? Who is the witness to this so-called crime?
Well, the answer seems to be inside the city's 311 system. Now, this is a non-emergency service, and it's designed to let regular citizens report things like potholes, or you guessed it, parking violations. You can even snap a photo and submit it as evidence. It's supposed to be a tool for people to help out in their community. But it looks like someone figured out how to turn it into a weapon. And you can really see the problem right here. On one side, you've got the intended use. You see a car blocking a sidewalk right now, you take a picture, you report it, and an officer can then check it out. Simple. But on the other side, that's the suspected abuse. Someone takes an old photo and just submits it over and over and over again. So you get multiple tickets based on a single piece of old, maybe even misleading evidence. So one of the residents started doing his own detective work. He went into the online complaint system, and he noticed a pattern. The same exact photos were being used for different complaints on different days. He came to the conclusion that somebody, probably a neighbor, has this whole library of photos and is just methodically uploading them to automatically generate tickets. No one even has to leave their house.
Okay, so that's the logical next question, right? If you didn't do it, if you have proof, you should just be able to fight the ticket and get it thrown out. Sounds easy enough. But this is where the story goes from a neighborhood mystery to a full-blown bureaucratic nightmare.
Yeah, easy is not the word for this. To fight the fine, you have to follow this whole drawn-out process. First, you protest. Then you submit your own evidence. And then you just wait for up to 90 days, 3 months, just for a review. And if they deny it, you have to start a whole new appeal process for a hearing. It's just a long, exhausting journey.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem for these residents. The ticket says you were parked illegally last Tuesday. How in the world do you prove you weren't? I mean, a photo of your car parked correctly today doesn't prove anything about last week. You're being asked to prove a negative, and your only opponent is a single anonymous photograph with zero context.
It really seems that way, doesn't it? An anonymous photo versus what you say happened. It's a classic he said, she said. But what if I told you this whole mess isn't actually about parking at all? What if it's about a fundamental right that's written directly into the US Constitution?
That's right. This little neighborhood fight over driveways actually brings up a huge constitutional question, one that gets right to the very core of how our justice system is supposed to work. And here it is. It's called the Confrontation Clause, and it's in the Sixth Amendment.
Now, this is a really big deal in American law. It basically guarantees that if you're accused of something, you have the right to face your accuser, to look them in the eye, to question them, to challenge what they're saying. Which brings us right back to that $108 question. If the person who submitted that photo is the witness against you, where are they? They're totally anonymous, just a ghost in the system. How can you possibly confront someone who isn't even there? So here's the bottom line, legally speaking. The person who complained, they are the witness. But if that witness doesn't show up to your hearing, you can't exercise your constitutional right to confront them. Not only that, but without the photographer there to say, yes, I took this picture at this time on this date, the photo itself is pretty questionable as evidence. A system that hands out penalties based on anonymous tips from people you can't question, well, that's standing on some very, very shaky legal ground.
Okay, so it's clear the system has some serious flaws. But look, knowing that doesn't really help you if you're the one getting these tickets in the mail. So let's get practical. What can you actually do to protect yourself from a neighbor who might be, well, complaint trolling you?
Here are a few solid takeaways. First, really know your local rules, down to the inch. Second, be super precise when you park. Don't give anyone an excuse. Make sure not even a tiny piece of your car is hanging over the sidewalk. You might even want to measure your driveway before you buy a new car to make sure it'll fit. And finally, here's a low-tech solution. Just talk to your neighbors. You know, a friendly chat is a whole lot better than an anonymous 311 complaint.
And in the end, this quote from one of the residents just says it all. It perfectly captures the frustration. In their eyes, this isn't about safety, it's not about clear sidewalks. It's about someone getting a kick out of messing with their neighbors' lives and using the city's own system to do it.
And that really leaves us with this one big lingering question. You know, systems like 311, they're built to be efficient, to be convenient, but when we automate the process of accusation and punishment, when we take out that human element of actually verifying something, of confrontation, who's left to protect our basic rights? It's definitely something to think about the next time technology offers us what looks like an easy shortcut to justice.